Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, this is Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, and we are here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. And I have a good friend of mine, Chantal Gerardy, here, who is a marketing superstar. And we're here to talk all around how do you get more out of your marketing, particularly in respect to utilizing virtual assistants to drive your marketing. And I'm sure for all of our clients and people who watch and listen to our show, they can relate to this, right? I know I've certainly been guilty of outsourcing marketing functions, expecting to get really high-level strategic outcomes from very cheap resources, and only to become disheartened that I wasn't getting value. And if only I knew this stuff sooner. So Chantal, I'm looking forward to doing a bit of a deep dive. So thanks for joining us. How you doing, mate?
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So before we get too far into it, Chantal, do you want to give us your origin story? Tell us a little about you and where you've come from.
I'd be happy to, because that'll explain my very mixed accent. So I moved from South Africa in 2008 to Australia. In South Africa, I grew up there. I lived in Durban, big family, go to school, everyone knows who you are. And I had health, wellness, and fitness centers actually in South Africa. And that's what I did. And getting clients wasn't an issue because, your mum would refer someone and your auntie would refer someone and everyone knows who you are. You grew up there. So it was really, really easy. But then coming to Australia in 2008, a little bit different because we sold up everything, came here. No one knew who I was. I had 3 daughters under the age of 5 years old. My husband at the time was going to go and work because it was like a job transfer. And I was going to stay at home like a good wife and look after the children. And then in the first 4 years, he was made redundant, and in fact, twice. And when that happened, we were still paying our way into the country. We weren't, there was no Centrelink, there was no welfare for us. We had no choice but to basically make something happen. And I started playing on Facebook initially and was like, how can I meet people? I can't go networking. I can't get out and about with these kids, but how do I go and get a brand and establish myself in a marketplace, a saturated marketplace here on the Gold Coast? How do I go and do that when I don't have the Botox and the big boobs like the Gold Coast community? And how do I do that? And, you do you, boo, that's fine, but that's not me. But how do I go and I do that? And that's what happened. That's how I started. I went onto Facebook and stuffed around and did a whole bunch of stuff that was wrong until eventually I figured out that I could really create meaningful relationships with people and find my people. And within 5 years, I grew a 6-figure health, wellness, and fitness center on the Gold Coast. And that was without ads, without outsourcing, no tech experience at all, no marketing background, absolutely nothing. And then I had the issue of all the subcontractors within the health, wellness, and fitness center going, they couldn't pay me rent every week. They were like, I don't have any money. Like, I can't get clients. So I started running these meetups and saying, well, let me help you, to get more clients. And that's how I ended up getting into what I do now. So it's been a bit of a journey. I literally fell into it.
Love it. And that's how the best things happen, it seems. The opportunity presents itself and we dive on it. And look, Chantal, what you've described is such a typical situation for so many business owners. Most business owners that we work with, they're experts at what they do, right? They're great technicians, right? They're great physiotherapists or great PTs or great tradies. And they rely on word of mouth and they almost wear that as a badge of honor. And they say, I don't market. I don't need to do anything to generate clients or leads, as if that's something that they should be impressed by. And then inevitably something happens, the phone stops ringing or they're not growing at the rate that they want. So where does this come from in your experience? Why do business owners have such a bad relationship with the concept of marketing and generating leads?
I think because they actually want to be a marketer. I actually think the only reason I got away with being able to get clients off social media is because it was social. So I think, people come to me and they go, oh, I'm not a marketer. And I'm going, good, because we don't want you to be. What we want you to have is create meaningful conversations with people that are logical and just just close the gap between how you don't know them to how you know them, and then, build that relationship with them and then offer them something they need. And I think this is where it goes wrong. The other where it goes wrong is that I think we live in a world right now where everyone says, if you don't like it, outsource it. And I think that robs people of the idea of, you still have to have the fundamentals in place. You've got to know what the heck you're doing. You've got to have the fundamentals in place with your strategy, your marketing plan, and everything else. And the last one is the quick fix. Oh my gosh, all the time, people go, I don't know how to market. I'm going to go do ads. I must do ads. And I'm like, if it's not working without ads, it ain't going to work with ads. So it's like, you have to get the foundation right. So I think it comes down to that for me, those three things.
Makes so much sense. And I think this is the difference between outsourcing and abdicating. And we've spoken about this before. We see this with money as well. The clients that we work with, they try and abdicate responsibility around their money and their marketing because they're not a marketer and they're not a money person. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Those are two things that you need, skills that you must master as a business owner. And it's not as hard as people think. So in your experience, Chantal, what goes into a great marketing strategy for your typical service business?
At the end of the day, an overall strategy is, and I'll explain it to you in my context, because this is what I actually worked out, is that I needed to feed my children. So when the money ran out at the end of the week, it ran out, and I knew I needed $1,000 a week in order to pay my rent, put fuel in the car, and feed the family, okay? And that's what I needed. So for me, then I looked at that $1,000 I needed and went, what is my genius, my zone of genius? How can I package that zone of genius up? Then I go, who's going to actually appreciate that and be happy to pay that? And who are those people? How do I effectively communicate to them online, and where do I find them? And how can I continue that conversation with them and build that know, like, and trust? And in essence, that is an overall strategy of, so it comes back to money. And this is why you and I connected so well with this, because for me, it came down to money. It came down to counting tiny teddies into packets for my children, when the money was going to run out. So, and that's an overall strategy. And I think what happens is people go, I've got a business and I've got a product and I've got whatever. They don't really look at how they're pricing it. They don't really know how to communicate it. They don't really understand the customer's buying habits or the buyer's persona. They don't really understand like the convincers that they've got to use, or the know, like, and trust that they've got to add in, and the rest, and they're just winging it. They're just absolutely winging it. I call it just spitting out content, hoping something's going to stick. And that's exhausting. That ain't fun. Having a strategy is much more fun.
I agree. Because it's not, if it's not congruent, it's never going to land. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? People are overwhelmed by choice of what they do. And usually that leads them to then hiring a virtual assistant who's typically a marketing manager. And then they just go, hey, here's the marketing function, go and handle it and generate me leads. Let me know when the phone rings. Why doesn't that work, Chantal? Like, why can't you just outsource your marketing to a VA in the Philippines?
Well, another story, because I love my story. So how I first worked this one out was I was called in to train a whole bunch of wives, because the husband decided that because the wife could post what she ate for breakfast that day and her cup of coffee and her margarita on the weekend, suddenly the wife was the best person to now go and generate leads for the business. So what happened was we had unhappy husbands and unhappy wives because they weren't performing, many of them sleeping in different bedrooms. And I'd get a phone call to say, Chantal, can you fix this? Because we're like wanting to kill each other right now. And that for me is when it first started to land, that, just because somebody has got the role of it, you still have to have those fundamentals, this overall strategy of what you do. Now, when we start outsourcing to offshore and we go overseas, because it's a completely different thing if we're outsourcing to Australians, but similar concept, it's all about effective communication and language, whether or not you're Filipino or Australian. So if you've got somebody that is from a different culture, a different background, now they're wanting to talk in an Australian tone or voice, if they don't get training in how to do that, if they don't get training in how to actually effectively communicate the benefits of a forklift, when in their life they've never had a forklift before and they've never driven one, they don't even know what it looks like, it's just not going to work. And I'll remember the biggest, such a big example of this is actually 2 Australian marketing managers were employed for almost a year. It cost the company, I think, 70K for each of them. And it was an Aussie skip bin company. And they called me in and they said, look, we're tired of not getting results. Can you train these 2 managers? And I went, yeah, sure. Let me have a look at this. And I said to the business owner, you got to sit in on the first meeting at least. And he was like, he didn't show for the first meeting, even though it was a requirement, which says a lot, right? Anyway, get the marketing managers. And when I started to ask them what this Aussie skip bin thing was, they thought that people were actually buying bins. Like they were buying those big bins that sit outside your house. They didn't understand the concept that the person would actually go on when they had a whole bunch of refuse at home, go and then buy a bag, get the bag delivered, then go and get them to pick up the bag inside the skip bin. So for a whole year of paying, 70K per marketing manager, these 2 people did not actually know what they were selling. No, I don't blame them. I do not blame them. I blame the business because the business never took the time to sit down with them and go, what is our overall strategy? What is our overall marketing plan? But the first question I ask is, do you know what we do for who? Do you know what makes us special? Do you know what makes us stand out from our competitors? And if you just ask those initial questions, you will be surprised because you'll get blank faces. And this happens to me all the time. Like I probably about 3 or 4 of these meetings a week. And the first meeting, and I always say to them, please, I'm not doing this to try and trick you out, but I need to know what level of understanding you're actually at when it comes to understanding this business.
What drives this disengagement from business owners? Because they must understand that this is the key to getting outcomes. And if they haven't got outcomes when they haven't been engaged, that's not just going to miraculously change. So what do you think gets in the way of them taking it more seriously?
There's a couple of things. So firstly, I believe that if you're not a 6-figure business, you shouldn't be outsourcing. You should be investing in yourself because you need to understand the fundamentals for yourself anyway. And I think the second part is we live in a culture right now where if we don't like it, we get told to outsource it. So if you look at the olden days with all the, Walt Disneys and whoever, and they used to sit for hours and months inside garages and build things. They weren't going out for cappuccinos and drinking margaritas every time. They were actually knuckling down and working. Whereas now we live in a world where it's like freedom lifestyle. But the thing is that you have to work up to it. It's a process. You can get there, but there are no quick fixes. So I think what happens is that when they get their virtual assistant, they go, right, I just want to get a virtual assistant. They're going to solve all my problems, especially when they want a cheap, nasty one as well. And then they don't want to have meetings with them. They don't want to talk to them. They don't want to see them or what they're doing. And then they go, it's the VA's fault, and they hire and they fire and rehire. And when they've done that a couple of times, that's generally when they come to me. Because that's when they hits the wall and they go, oh, hold on a sec, it must be me. Maybe I do need this strategy or this plan because something's going wrong here, But when you work with a lot of purpose-led business owners, they genuinely care about the people that they have inside their business. They genuinely do care about them. They're happy to have those meetings. They want some guidelines or structure with someone to hold them accountable and pull them into place. And I suppose that's the gap that I feel.
Makes perfect sense. And this is like bringing back memories for me, painful memories. I made all of these mistakes myself. And for years I said, I'm not a marketer. This is not my area of expertise. And I remember I hired this guy as this Spanish guy, really, really nice guy, really, really charismatic. And he came on board as our marketing manager. We paid him really well. He's earned six figures. And he just bullshitted us for ages. And a really nice guy. He was doing a lot of stuff, but there was no results. And I remember my business partner and I at the time, we kept asking him, do you even know how to generate any leads? And he's like, oh, yeah, of course I do. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And then it happened a while later, he was going back to his country. And then he finally admitted after a few beers that he'd never known how to generate a lead in his life. Right. And the point is that it wasn't until I took personal responsibility for my education and learnt this stuff and then worked with people like yourself to build a strategy and then work out how I bring the right resources in to help me implement that we actually started getting results. So guys, if you're listening to this, you must take responsibility, and it's not as hard as you think. I actually really enjoy it now. It's my favorite part of the business. So Chantal, let's then talk about the VA. how can VAs work really well in a business when it comes to building the marketing function? Where have you seen it generate great results?
You know what they say, just you've got to find somebody that's got a great attitude. So experience is not necessarily a factor, because I've had many that have come to me that have been experienced, and they've been experienced in a certain area, but they weren't trained right. So then you've got to untrain them. So sometimes that can actually be a little bit more problematic, unless they're open to learning and change. The other thing is around giving them permission to speak up. So every VA that I have on board with me now, and all those that I'm fortunate enough to train and work with, I always say to them, you are the expert in areas, and I want you to show me your expertise. So I give them permission to problem solve, and I give them permission to speak up as well. But the most important thing I think is that I give them time. What I've realized as well is that if you actually allocate specific time, because when I first started, they used to bug me all the time, and I'm talking about my personal VAs. I got bugged from 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, sometimes on weekends. And I was like, this is not sustainable. I can't do what I need to do. So when I went, right, we've got an hour on a Monday, which is a goal setting, and we're going to go through our goals and your projects. You can ask me all your questions. You've got an hour on your Friday. What did you do? What did you struggle with? What were your wins? What do you need support with? I found that my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was so much more freer, and everybody else felt more empowered. So I just went, if it's in your diary, it's more likely to happen. So when they've got those boundaries, I think sometimes they better. The other thing too, which is a bit, again, a funny story I can tell, is most of you, if you understand DISC profiling, you would have already worked out I'm a D personality type. So I'm outcome focused. So the first thing I do when I interview virtual assistants, I've got to make sure that they can work with a D personality type. And I know that I can't work with an S personality type. So the other thing is communication styles is kind of fun. Have that sort of conversation with the business owner and with your team. So we can laugh at that and go, yeah, that makes sense. Now I understand why you like that. You're not trying to be a D, you are a D, but that's just how you are. And then we learn to talk in each other's sort of languages. Now, the other weird one, which someone said to me actually at Business Blueprint Conference recently, that they were like, they've never heard about this in business, but I use it and it's great. Love languages. Okay. When you understand the love languages and you start to pick up on whether or not they are words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gifts, there's another one there, and physical touch. Those are the 5. You can look it up. It's not mine. When you go look at those, and I can straight away know which virtual assistant likes that, all I know is to just sprinkle them a little bit of what they like. And it makes such a difference. And even for me as a D personality type, that is not an effort. It's a thought on my side. It's something that I choose to do now, because I know that it's going to support my overall relationship with my marketing managers, with my virtual assistants, and it's going to make a much funner environment for all of us. It's not me not being me, but it's me just taking the time to really give them a little bit of love in their language.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. Great. So when it comes to delivering outcomes around marketing, at the end of the day, business owners are engaging in this process. They're doing marketing because they want to generate leads. And most are disheartened because whatever they've done in the past hasn't generated leads. So in your experience, do you feel that every business can create a high converting marketing and lead generation strategy? And how long does it take to get there, if so?
Well, let's start with the second one first. At the end of the day, when someone says to me, how quickly can I get an ROI? I go, well, how hot are you online? How relevant are you? How hot are you? How big is your audience? And are they actually your audience? How did they get there? Did you just buy them? Did you buy your audience? Did they come in under some other thing on your email list or on your socials? Because whatever you try to sell them, if you bought a leads list, it's not going to work. So the first thing I look at is I look at current state, and I go, current state is, let's be honest, you've got nothing. You've got 3 followers. You've got a $5,000, 5,000 contacts on your email list, but none of those people came to you from an MLM business, which I love MLM businesses, but they came to you from an MLM business, and now you're trying to sell them legal software. It's not a hot audience. So I always just like a truth bomb. That's how long it's going to take. So we just need to have a bit of a truth bomb around that. Look at that. The next thing is that COVID, if anything, showed us how paramount it is for us to have multiple lead generation funnels within our business. It showed us that. Anyone who had sort of one thing that was going and they were doing rinse and repeat suddenly just went. So the whole thing for me is that how many lead generation funnels can we get into our business that are relevant to your clients? How many can we actually get in there? You know, we can do a lead magnet. Maybe it's a lead magnet. Maybe we've got a quiz. Maybe we can do a sales webinar. Maybe we can run a competition. And at least if we've got these multiple funnels set up, we can then go in and tap into those. So in social media, we've got stuff to play with, to engage our audience, to draw them in, hooks to draw them in. You could do mini challenges. You could have a private Facebook group as a lead generator. So whatever that is, every business is different, but it has to be relevant to what you're selling. It's got to be relevant to the audience, because if it's not relevant, it's not going to work. And then you've got to have an end-to-end strategy. And this is where a lot of people fail as well, because a lot of people come to me and they've been with a website developer and they've just done a website, but now they don't have the social media content plan or the funnels in place to push people to the website. So it's not going to work. Or, you know, they've got the website set up to now capture leads, but then they haven't had an email marketing specialist to do the email marketing. Or they go and get 3 different specialists, a social media person, a website person, an email marketing person, and they're not working together. It's like having a marketing team and a sales team that don't work together. There's no way you're going to get results. So when you have somebody that works on end-to-end funnel creation, it's everything from social media to the website to there, so that there's no kinks in the hose, that nothing can leak out. And then, of course, you've got to test and measure. So reporting is obviously very important. So that's why that Friday session I said is fundamental for sitting down and going, whatever your KPIs or whatever your reporting is, let's have a look and see what's working and not working.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I guess this is the thing about marketing. It's science, right? And it's about tracking and measuring and then backing the winning horses. And we see it with the clients that come on board with us. 90+% of them are not tracking KPIs and metrics. And they don't know the numbers. And how can you be backing the winning horses or know where to invest your money if you don't have that level of insight? And good news is these days, a lot of it can be automated. So you don't need to be plugging stuff into a spreadsheet, but it just needs to be tracked. So that's music to my ears. So Chantal, if somebody's listened or watched this and they're interested in finding out more about how they could potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
The website is called onlinebusinessmarketing.com.au. And if you head to the free resources tab, I think the resource that you probably want out of there, there's about 5 of them, but hot leads on repeat is pretty cool. It'll actually help teach you to set up a lead magnet. So you can, in essence, give that to your virtual assistant, ask them to go over it, then have a strategic meeting with them, strategic meeting in your diary, put it there, go over it together, see what they've learned, help them to fill in the missing gaps, help them to effectively communicate, because you will understand your business more than they will. So help to fill the gaps, especially with the content, set it up, then test and measure it. So hot leads on repeat, yeah, there's a pretty cool document there under onlinebusinessmarketing.com.au.
Beautiful. We'll make sure that the link is in the show notes. And if you had to give us one last golden nugget to finish with today, what would that golden nugget be?
Just put marketing in your diary as a reoccurring event. Just do that. Just a reoccurring event on, I'm going to work on my marketing. So time blocking is so important. But if it's not in your diary, you're not going to do it. And if you don't market, you don't get sales. So even if you're just staring at a blank screen in that time, it will get better as you start to apply yourself. But just put marketing in your diary, please.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. It's so important, right? And like any skill, you need to practice it if you're going to get better at it. So guys, just remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure that you implement something that we've covered off on today's show. Make sure you jump in the show notes and jump onto those resources. Chantal, thanks for making the time and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks so much.